Hey guys, welcome to the Smart Venture Podcast. In each episode, we're going to have conversations with some of the top investors, superstar founders, as well as well-known tech company executives in Silicon Valley. We'll have a coffee chat with them to learn their way of thinking and actionable tips on how they build or invest in a successful company. Before we start our show today, I want to make sure the listener, aka you, understand that everything a person say on the podcast only reflects hers or his own opinion, not the show or the company they work at. Our guest today is the Chief Revenue Officer at Envoy. Prior to Envoy, he was a VP of Global Sales and Customer Success at Dropbox. He also worked in leadership positions across sales, marketing, and finance department at top companies globally, such as Vodafone and Dell. His name is Philip Lacor. In the last episode, we talked about how Philip started his career in tech, how he developed his career in multiple countries and different job functions. In this episode, we'll focus more on how Philip built up his network in multiple different countries, how he set up KPIs, how he identified customers, and built up a successful team as the Chief Revenue Officer. Please enjoy. I like that you're taking actions, actively building up your professional network. As someone in their 20s, I'm really curious about what's your day-to-day like working as a tech executive. What do you and your peers do to maintain a professional network in a social setting?
Yeah. So, right now I'm with Envoy. I joined them recently. So, and I onboarded during working from home. So the social activities have been more over Zoom than anything else. But to your question, okay, what does a day-to-day in Dropbox or now at Envoy look like? First of all, every day is packed and every day is slightly different. And that's maybe the answer you would expect. But what I would say is the question for me is more like, how do you deal with that? So a day can go from like... So today I spoke with an external partner of Envoy. We had with our staff a culture session. The morning we started with a number of customers that were busy renewing. There's some more strategic planning in the afternoon and so on. So the number of topics that crosses your desk or your Zoom is just very, very high. And then you have Slack pinging and so on. So I think the question is almost like, how do you deal with all these impulses and all these changes? And there, I do have some deliberate things. I do always want to have like a further out goal, a point on the horizon. And this is one of the... I learned that from one of my leaders in the past. But if you can say, okay, in 2 years from now, we will have achieved the following things. That at least you need to have like some sort of direction. I think the other thing that then is important is I do really spend time planning my weeks, and so I do take the time to write things down or really deliberately think about, okay, what needs to happen this week and what are my top priorities, and what are the few things that really are important. And I do believe that weeks are better than days. Weekly planning is better than daily planning. And then I know once I know what the few top things are that need to happen in the week, then there's more flexibility in the days as they move on. So interruptions can happen, and that's fine. But it's still no like on a weekly basis. These are things that need to happen. So. But again, being conscious of that and really reflecting on what are the few priorities that make a difference, I think that is very important. And then sometimes things that we forget are the things that are less urgent but really important. So, for example, hiring for the team or people development, those are the things. If you don't like consciously plan them, they cannot make it to the urgency always. But they are really critical to grow the business.
You mentioned a good point about making plans. When it comes to planning and prioritizing your life, on a personal level, what's your life goal? When you just started your career, do you have a plan to achieve a certain level of success by a certain age? You are the chief revenue officer. In terms of hitting company revenue goals, how do you figure out what's the most revenue generating things to do this week? How do you create KPI for work?
Yeah. Yeah, on the professional goals, I don't have goals that says I need to have achieved the following position by in the following time frame. And some people don't do that, but I'm not a believer of that. I do think that what is important is that you try to A, enjoy, and B, perform in your current role. And rather than always looking at, okay, what's the next opportunity? Because I think that leads to frustration. I also believe that when you do focus on your current role and you enjoy it, that often goes like hand in hand. The next opportunity will come, and it does help when you know some people. But I think in general that is the key thing. So don't say like, okay, I want to have to achieve this role in the next 2 years or 3 years. That has definitely not worked for me. Then to your question on how do you prioritize the day to day, I think it's or how do you determine these priorities? I think it's important to again to look at the data on one hand and to listen to people and to customers on the other hand. I do, and that's maybe the engineering background, is that really looking at reporting, really trying to understand the data. And what then also helps if you have really understand the economics of like SaaS. So a lot has been written about what are important parameters to look at. For example, net retention or churn or profitability metrics, lifetime value, blah blah blah. So these are out there. You can like pick them from the internet. So it's not. So that's not rocket science. But I think what is then important to imply to start really applying that and executing against that in your work. And then once you start applying these right benchmarks, then it's fairly straightforward to see where the gaps are. Now closing them is another matter, but I think and then to that point, what I believe that in the day to day, there's on one hand the run the business, so which is like the tactical day to day stuff, but that needs to be combined with changing the business. So once you have defined your priorities and you can say, okay, I'm gonna move the needle in the right direction by launching 2 or 3 more strategic initiatives that are going to run like multi-quarter, and then having a cadence around that weekly or bi-weekly where you come back on that same strategic topic. So there's sort of like sprints. In the engineering world, you would call them sprints. But I think they equally go for go-to-market. So every week you check in on like what a strategic objective is. For example, you want to go international. Every week you check the progress, or you're going to double the size of the team. Every week you focus on like, okay, is it going the right way? So these building or changing the business and focusing on that, they drive like pace as well.
You mentioned that you set benchmark and learn technical skills for work. When you transitioned from Vodafone, which is similar to Verizon, to a software company like Dropbox, what were some technical skills you needed to acquire for the transition to a tech company? You also successfully transitioned to work in a different country in a leadership position. What's your mindset like when you made the transfer? What were some soft skills you needed for the role?
Yeah. So on the technology change from Vodafone to Dropbox, as I said, Vodafone is a telco. They had we did innovation in a number of areas, which was, for example, unified communication and collaboration, which is like Zoom now, for example, but also like Internet of Things and security. And then from my background in Dell, I had also like taken a number of technologies that I found relevant. Having said that, coming into Dropbox, I had to learn specifically about collaboration tools, but also integrations with other vendors. I think many of these SaaS companies, they don't exist in isolation. Many of them have like integrations with technology partners. And really understanding, I had to like sit down and really think through like what are the main partners that we have. What are the main like ecosystems out there in this cloud world and in the SaaS world that are relevant to the space. So and over time you learn them. To your questions about soft skills, that is just a journey like throughout the career, and it never stops. But I do think that several of the things that help is like asking for feedback. So they can be in the form of like 360s. I do feel that the performance reviews that I've gotten in the past from my leaders has helped me to improve. So, for example, I gave that example of putting a point on the horizon 2 years out and saying, okay, that's the direction where we want to go. That is literally feedback from one of my previous managers. Another thing that helped me is that over the years I've done a number of like personality tests. One of the ones that we did do in Dropbox was Enneagram, which really gives you like a pretty painful and accurate insights of not only your strength but also your weaknesses, and having great insights about that I think really helps. And what then also helps is if you have to share those with your peers, and everybody does that, and you talk about the resulting group dynamic that comes out of this mix of personalities. I think that also helps. And I do think that you can really work on yourself and work and get better every time, but you need to like ask for like feedback and organize it a little bit.
I feel like most of the established executives probably wanted to stay in a specific industry because that's where they have their network, especially in sales. It's really based on connections. You switched industry from Vodafone to Dropbox as a leader in sales. How do you quickly find customer and quickly build these connections to make the sale?
Yeah, that's a great question. So sometimes people hire for someone's Rolodex or network. I think that has limited value, to be honest. So indeed, when I went from Vodafone to Dropbox, I knew like lots of German customers for Vodafone, but I didn't necessarily know any UK or American customers for Dropbox. And the same is for Envoy now. So I think it's really important. You can do a couple of things. One is like when you look at your the existing customer list that you have, and you really analyze that, and you see where has growth been coming from, which verticals. I think that's important. Which segments are you? Enterprise, mid-market, SMB. Verticals, are you like pharma, tech, construction? And then, but then also even like understanding your sales motion. Do they have land and expand? Do they go wall to wall? So understanding that, I think, is very important. And then understanding like the use case. So what is the pain that these customers have? And what is the use case of your product? And what do you really have to offer them? And once you really understood that, then you can start building a replicable sales motion. You can say, okay, team, these are the type of customers that we need to look at. They have the following issues, and this is as a result. Here's where we can offer value. And what we then do is like, okay, when we say, suppose that construction is our vertical, then we would do searches on like, okay, what are all the companies in that construction vertical? In the past at Dropbox, we also used like data science. to prioritize prospects based on the identified pattern that we have. So we knew that, okay, this type of customers will buy. So we had algorithms developed that would score prospects that we weren't in. And we would literally rank them and prioritize them and say, okay, this is where we have a higher chance to sell into. But it takes a lot of work, but that work is important and it's important to be done. The second thing I would offer is that I ask my team to be in front of customers, not only to do a handshake, but really also customers that have real problems or escalations. Because again, I think you can learn a lot from that, and they will help you improve your service or your product. And I think leading by example as like a CRO or as like a CEO and being in front of the people who buy your services or products, I think is extremely important.
I totally agree on study the industry, study the data to look at the customer's profile. For bigger company like Dropbox, it's probably really easy to identify who the customers are. There's already a lot of data to study. If you run a smaller company, how should you figure out who the customers are when there's limited amount of data?
Yeah. So right now I'm at Envoy. They are in the workspace management software space. So they improve workflow processes and they have visitor management. Right now we're also very much involved in returning to work. But there we have a good system of like collecting all customer feedback on a continuous basis in a central repository. And we use that to really prioritize product features that are requested by these customers. And we do analysis on that and really figure out, okay, these are things that are broadly applicable and that are being asked by a multitude of customers. That is one thing. Another thing that we do is then, bringing the different functions, sales, marketing, product engineering closely together and talk about these customer insights and share those insights, I think is very, very important. And then one of the things that we will do is something that we did in the past as well, is build a customer advisory board, which is like a board that gets together like once every quarter or once every 6 months with handpicked customers that are really capable and able to give like good but also really honest feedback on how you are doing and where they see the industry going. And having a continuous dialogue with like a set of like handpicked customers can really help you with your roadmap, with your strategic positioning, and figuring out your longer term strategy. So that is definitely something that I would also recommend.
Yeah, I really love that. How do you pick the customers on the advisory board? Is it based on spending?
No, it's not. It's not that. We just know when you know certain people that have like in these customers that you work with, some of them will have like a great vision on the industry. Some will really know the competitive landscape extremely well and can talk to that. And then they need to be able to like synthesize these findings and be willing to share them with also the CEO and the leadership of the country of the company. So it's definitely not on spend. It's really on like who can really help you with these strategic questions.
At the beginning, if you haven't had any customers, how do you identify who would purchase your product or service in the very early stage? The product or service is changing because of the customer is changing. For example, at the beginning stage, your product's main customers are companies and real estate. Then because of the product evolves, the main customer may become the hospitals. How do you adjust with the change? There are two different sets of customers. You may not have the resources to go all in on both industries. In terms of building a team, how would you select your own team?
On the first one, on customer identification, when you're a really small company, I think one way to do it is using a freemium model. So both Dropbox and Envoy, they have a freemium model, and they were also able to do the following, which is namely build virality. So the first customer set came in through a very viral motion, which is a fantastic thing to have as a company. If you don't have that, you probably need to keep looking for product market fit. So tweaking your product until you find a set of customers that starts to become more replicable. I also think you cannot scale up until you have found that. And we and product market fit you will recognize. We see it with our return to work product, Envoy Protect that we have right now. Yeah, once we had a beta, customers started flocking to it and usage went up. So you know there's something there, and that you have product fit, and that gives you the opportunity to scale that. If you don't have that, then it is definitely more challenging. On your question on how do you compile a team, I believe very much in diversity. So I don't think you should only hire experienced hires. I don't think you only should hire huge talent without experience. I really believe in the mix. On average, I tend to maybe gear more to hiring for potential and talent than for experience, because I think the markets change very fast, and typically I called out a number of traits that I think that are important. Hiring for DNA and hiring for traits, I think is more important than hiring for experience. Having said that, you need to have some experience in the team as well. So finding a happy mix there. But I do tend to take bets on young, high potential people every once in a while.
For sure. So in terms of these young, high potential people, what are some quality do you look for in them?
Yeah, I think there are some of the same qualities that we look for. So do they have a growth mindset? Are they really curious? Do they have some resilience? So I've interviewed young people who had to overcome things in their personal life, which was sometimes challenging, but or in work they have shown that even at younger age they had have shown resilience and tenacity. I look for people who can work with others. No one is successful on their own. So self-awareness and some humbleness and enjoying teamwork. I think that is very important. And a can-do attitude, positive mindset, energy. These three things together are also things that I look for.
Besides looking at people's resume, how do you quickly identify if the talent meets your requirements?
Yeah, so I like to ask for examples in the interviews. And if someone can give me really clear examples of a challenging situation that they had to overcome, and it shouldn't be a small thing, but a meaty thing, and then also ask, okay, what actually have they learned from the situation, and how are they applying that? And if they have concrete examples of that, that helps. To test for curiosity, for example, it's when you say, okay, how have you gone about analyzing an opportunity that you had to address in the past, the problem that you had in the past. So what was the approach? And then again, how have you learned from that? How are you applying that now? So I think thinking through that on what are some of these questions that you want to ask, that's important.
Who is the most recent person you hired and how do they stand out?
Well, I'm actually, so I joined Envoy recently, and I'm actually in the hiring process right now. So it's a little bit too early. I haven't closed yet, but but I'm looking for these similar things yet. So I have already seen candidates that have done have developed, have pushed through difficult situations, synthesize the learnings, are able to articulate those in a good way. All of that.
Speaking of the job transfer, you worked in a lot of really competitive job positions in the past. How do you cultivate your network to put yourself in those positions?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. you need to like build network. That is important, right? If you stay at home, if you don't publish anything on LinkedIn, you don't do podcasts like you are doing, then it's harder to find you. But I would say the other thing is like, okay, what have you done in your past, and you built on all these experiences. For me, it's been a sequence of one after the other, and one really led to the other, and I was able to get the next one because I had done the one before. There have been roles that were maybe less interesting, but usually they led to the next thing. So the combination of okay, on one hand, you have to have like some network, but then also making sure that you do well. I think that combination gets you next roles.
Your current title is a CRO. What is the difference between CRO and CFO? I assuming CRO is focusing more on growth and scaling. What's your plan on growing your current company, and how do you create the KPI for yourself?
Yeah. So CFO and CRO. Someone said to me the other day is the CRO takes care of how much money comes in, and the CFO takes care of how much money goes out.
Yeah.
Which is maybe a little bit oversimplified, but I would say that CFO and CRO are really close partners. I think that's really important. Right now I work with Envoy CFO very much on the multi-year growth plan. And we're not looking only at growth, but we also look at like profitability, payback periods, and things like that. I believe that that there you have like a joint responsibility to scale up a company in the right way. So I feel they need to be very, very close partners and understand each other's challenges. For example, the CFO on their part, they need to understand like, for example, sales compensation plans or quota setting for sales, things like that. When the CFO has affinity for that, or even like when a CFO speaks to customers and understand what the challenges are, so really leaning into each other's discipline tremendously helps with like the teamwork. Then on like how do you scale, or how are we trying to build like Envoy? Once a product market fit has been established, there's multiple vectors along which you can drive growth, right? So right now we are building out our sales teams and also the engineering teams and so on. So we are in hiring mode, which is adding resources, which is like on one hand straightforward, but you want to do it in a way that maintains productivity and profitability. I have seen situations where companies were just building out fast and where productivity got lost, and I don't think then you're getting ahead of yourself. But then there's other dimensions that we look at in the international dimension. So this is where the international experience comes in. But looking at other markets, in general, I think great companies always increase their TAM, their total addressable market, and they do it in multiple ways. They try to have more products that widen their market, the market they can go after, or they tailor for certain verticals. For example, when they want to go deeper in the healthcare vertical, they get like HIPAA compliance, or they do certain things that makes them more suitable for that vertical. But always trying to increase your TAM and your market sizing. I think that is very important. And then next to like expanding your team, expanding international, increasing your TAM, you can also look at have we addressed all the channels? And the channels go from really self-serve viral channel or the virality to like self-serve, but then also not only direct sales, but also channel sales and partners. they can be very important. And covering all those dimensions are critical. And that brings you back to, by the way, to prioritization. You can do them all at the same time. But then you go like, okay, if I need to put them in a matrix and say, okay, effort versus what's going to be the result and the output, and you try to sort of get a trade-off and say, okay, let's do this one first or these two first, and then push back on the other ones. That's never that easy, but I think it's still important.
Totally. We're at the last part of the interview. I have 3 questions for you. Who made the biggest impact in your career? What's your favorite book? And who would you invite to your dinner party?
All right. Biggest impact in my career. I've had like tons of good leaders. I will call out a couple. Steve Milligan, CEO of Western Digital. He was my early finance lead at Dropbox. Eventually, he became like later on like CEO of a Fortune 500 company. But also like at Dropbox, I had a number of good leaders. I had like Dennis Woodside, now CEO of Impossible Foods, Thomas Hansen, CEO of UiPath, Yamini Rangang, Chief Customer Officer, HubSpot, Olivia Nottebohm, CEO of Dropbox now. So these were all leaders. From each of them, I learned things that I'm trying to take with me. So it's not one leader, but they all gave me different impulses. So yeah, dinner party, I would invite Roger Federer. What I like about him is not only that he's a good tennis player, but he has reinvented himself, I think 3 times or 4 times in his career, where he changed his way of playing, and as a result, he's been at the top for so long. So that I find really fascinating.
Cool. What about your favorite book?
That's a hard one. I got many, but one of them I like is Too Big to Fail, which was about the financial crisis and financial institutions and the role of those in society. And I think that's a question of the role of companies and the role of banks that will come back like every 10 or 20 years. So I think that book will remain very actual. But love that book.
For sure. Where can we find you if you're not at work? In other words, what's your hobby? Yeah,
so in the winter you can find me on the mountain. I'll be skiing. So we really love that. We put the kids on skis, so really enjoy that. And then where else would you find me? Summertime at the beach for the same reason. The kids love that. But I think doing sports. So I love like running, cycling, Peloton, things like that. Trying to keep fit and to also keep your mind sound. And the physical part is then also important. Sure. And the other thing I love doing is that with friends and with my wife go for like very nice dinners, have a glass of wine. That I also enjoy.
What's your guys' favorite places in the Bay Area?
Well, they're now all closed. So we had some great restaurants in Napa that we really love.
Yeah, that's
There's
awesome.
some French brasseries that are really great. So
yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on to the show, Philip.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Smart Venture Podcast. If you like it, please leave us a quick review and hit subscribe so you don't miss any tips from the experts. If you want to receive our updates, please leave your email at smartventurepod.com. If you want to connect with me, all my socials are at Grace Gong GG. Beside LinkedIn, it's just Grace Gong. I'd love to connect with you and let me know your thought about the show. Now you can also listen to Smart Venture Podcast on YouTube. Go to smartventurepod.com, click the YouTube link on the top banner. Don't forget to hit subscribe and smash the like button. See you next time.